All right, let's get to this. Chicago is gearing up for a legal battle over what can be taught in public schools. The Trump administration threatening to cut federal funding to states that don't roll back diversity, equity, and inclusion programs in schools. And for Chicago, $1.3 billion are on the line. Chalkbeat Bureau Chief Becky Vevea is here, and you just published an article on this exact topic. What is at stake for Illinois students and taxpayers, Becky? And what percentage of the CPS budget comes from the federal government?
For CPS, it's about 13% as of the most recent budget. And every other district in the state, it varies a little bit, but it's around 10% when you look kind of nationwide. Federal government spending is about 10% of school budgets.
And then when we talk about Illinois as a whole, because we're not just talking about Chicago, like if they cut off federal funding, it's going to be for the whole state. And that's about, what, $6 billion that Illinois gets from the federal government?
So $6 billion passes through the state of Illinois and goes to different districts from the federal government. And that $6 billion typically is targeted toward special needs students or low-income students through something called Title I. And so that money, when it does get, if it does get paused or cut off in some way, that would be who would be hit first.
Now, though, couldn't the state, though, reorganize education funding and make sure that those special groups are covered?
So they could. It would take allocations from the General Assembly, the state lawmakers. And state funding does make up a significant portion of most school districts' budgets as well. But as many know, school districts are funded by property taxes as well. So what ends up happening usually is the local school district has to go to taxpayers or raise property taxes to fill budget gaps.
And that was my next question. You just answered it. As an Illinois taxpayer, are we going to be on the hook? And it sounds like we could be. They could raise property taxes even more, which we who live in Illinois are like, this is insanity already. I understand that CPS is already under investigation by the Department of Education in at least 2 instances, so they have to already be on the radar by the Trump administration.
That's right. We've seen 2 what they're called as civil rights complaints through the Office of Civil Rights at the Department of Education. 2 different ones filed by various groups. One is a Virginia-based group that has some concerns about the district's Black Student Success Plan, which just rolled out in February. And the department opened an investigation on that. There's, some concerns and there's some questions from legal experts that say, the department isn't entirely clear about what is and isn't allowed. And often it's a debate over if it's an exclusionary thing versus if it's a, you can teach Black History Month as long as everybody's involved and everybody's included. And so I think that there will be some really interesting legal arguments that get kind of hammered out during this complaint.
And then finally, it's my understanding that in the new Chicago Teachers Union contract that they're going to be fully voting on today, there were also established some criteria that, hey, diversity, equity, inclusion must stay in the schools.
Well, it's allowing for it to stay in the school. Again, I think were very cognizant of making sure that it wasn't necessarily a requirement, but giving teachers the freedom to teach those things, and that those things will then be protected. The union and even Mayor Brandon Johnson have talked about protecting and creating this sort of force field against the federal government to be able to continue to teach those things. But I think, again, you're going to see this sort of legal battle play out as to what is and isn't okay. And I think it's a really interesting and fascinating question.
Well, and I know you don't know the answer to this, but the timeline, I mean, the federal funding could be cut, let's say, and then who knows how long it's going to take for this to get through the courts.
Correct. And one thing that I've tried to explain to people is that it's the Department of Education. Congress has to allocate a lot of this money, and Congress would have to act to end it, if you will. Officially ended. The Department of Education acts as sort of a spigot that can turn on and off the water, and I think that what you would more likely see is a potential turning off the water and then a court intervening saying turn that back on, because Congress is the one that actually allocates these streams. Title I dollars for special needs students, those are acts of Congress, and some of them have significant bipartisan support, and so how Congress interacts with the administration will also be very interesting in this case, and then how that plays out for districts on the ground.
Becky, you broke this down so that we can all understand it. Thank you. Becky with Chalkbeat, Chicago. Thank you so much.